Welcome back, everyone. Last lesson we talked about angles, okay? This lesson we're still going to be talking about angles, and we're going to start talking about some specific angle relationships, all right? Now, these relationships are very important. They're going to come up over and over and over and over again, all right? So it's very important to recognize these, all right? So the first angle relationship that we're going to talk about is what's called vertical angles. And it gives us some examples of vertical angles here. So it says QPY, all right, QPY, all right, you can always make the angle just by tracing the letters. And SPT are vertical angles. So what do we notice about those angles right there? Okay, think about that. Then we have RPS. And it says that's a vertical angle with YPV. All right, what do you notice about those angles there? All right, so it says name another pair of vertical angles in the figure on the right, and then using that information come up with a definition of vertical angles. So I recommend you guys pause the video right here and try and answer those two questions. Okay, so if we look, all right, we have these two angles, right, as vertical angles. We have these two angles as vertical angles. So what angles haven't we used yet? Okay, we haven't used this angle or this angle. So I would guess that those two angles are also vertical angles. So that would be QPR and this one would be TPV. All right. And if you look, all right, what do we notice about all these pairs of angles? Well, the red angles we have right there, the purple angles we have right there, and the green angles we have right there. And you'll notice that they are all across from each other, okay? So a definition of vertical angles can be angles across from each other when lines intersect. Okay, and this leads us to a fact, all right? This is called the vertical angles theorem, okay? So it is important to know this name, all right? Because when we get to proofs later, you're gonna have to know some theorems, all right, and be able to use them. And the vertical angles theorem is one that is used often, all right? The vertical angles theorem says that vertical angles are congruent, okay? That means they have the same angle. And if you look at this picture, you can kind of see that. I don't know if you can with all this stuff on it, but the angles directly across from each other, all right, they have the same angle measure. So we're going to do an example here. So solve for x using the figure below. So again, these angles are across from each other, all right? I always say they kind of make a bow tie, all right? And since they're across from each other, that means we know they're equal to each other. So we're going to write an equation where we set them equal to each other, all right? And we're going to solve that equation. So we're going to subtract by x on both sides. Now we're going to add 5. 21 equals 3x. Now we can divide by 3. and we get 7 equals x. So people say often that geometry is how you set up the equations, right? And then algebra is how you finish it. So you've got to know the geometry to know that these two angles are equal to each other, right? So you can create that equation. So vertical angles are congruent, all right? That's the first very important thing to know that we're going to talk about today. The second thing that we're going to talk about is something called linear pairs, all right? So we're going to do the same thing that we just did. This time it gives us some examples of linear pairs. So it says RPS, all right? So we've got RPS and YPR. Y to P and then back to R. So notice that we skipped over Q there, and it says this is a linear pair. Okay? Then we have VPT. And it says that's a linear pair with TPR. So again, we're going T to P to R. Now notice again, we skipped over S. So what do you notice about these lines? And it says name another linear pair of angles in the figure on the right. And then using that information, come up with the definition of linear pair. So again, I encourage you to pause this video and try and answer those questions on your own for a second. Okay, so a linear pair, all right? If you look at the purple, what do you notice about the purple? The two angles make a line, right? Linear pair, okay? What do we notice about red? The two angles also make a line, okay? So what are linear angles? They're two angles that make a line. So let's think of another one that could make a line. So let's go QPY. You know, there's many that you could have put here. I'm just kind of making up one. QPY. And then just like all the other ones, we don't want to go like TPV because that's not making a line. We want to go TPY. All right, we want to go up the same one that we did before. And so now see how our angles, we've got this angle right here, right? Combining with this angle, and together it's making a line where they come together. So what was the second one I said? TPY. So a definition of linear pair of angles would be angles, actually adjacent angles, that create a straight angle. So if you remember yesterday, or maybe not yesterday, but whenever you did angles, all right, a straight angle is one that is just a straight line. Okay, that's why it's called a straight angle. So that's what we would say, all right? This right here, that's a straight angle. It has a degree of 180. So kind of just use that to lead us into the linear pair postulate, which says that linear angles sum, which means they add up to 180 degrees, all right? If they make a straight angle is 180 degrees, so that's why this is a postulate, right? It doesn't need proving, it just kind of comes from the definition. So we're gonna do an example here. Solve for Q, all right? We have two angles right here. Those two angles make a straight line, all right? So we automatically know, you need to be thinking of this all the time. Okay, those add up to 180, all right? So what we're gonna do, we're going to add 7Q minus 46 plus 3Q plus 6 equals 180. So 7Q plus 3Q, that's 10Q. minus 40 equals 180. Add 40 to both sides. So again, we use geometry, our geometric knowledge, to set up this equation. And then we're going to use algebra to solve. Divide by 10, Q equals 22. All right? So this is used all the time. Seriously, you're going to see this all the time in every unit over and over again. All right? Anytime two angles make a line like this, they add up to 180. All right? You got to remember that. So the last thing that we're going to talk about, all right, we're going to two more pairs, but I'm just going to give you definitions here because this one's kind of hard to tell. And it says draw a picture too, so we'll do that. So complementary angles, all right? Complementary angles add up to 90 degrees, all right? Complementary angles add up to 90 degrees. So if you wanted to draw a picture, all right, we would have a 90-degree angle like that. And then you could just draw a line somewhere in the middle. So therefore, this angle and this angle, right, they would add up to 90 degrees. Supplementary angles, all right, supplementary angles add up to 180 degrees. So complementary angles come up sometimes. Supplementary angles come up all the time, just like with linear pair, right? Linear angles are supplementary. That's another way that you could say this fact, all right? Linear angles are supplementary. They add up to 180 degrees. So if we want to draw supplementary angles, we draw a line and then just draw an angle coming out of it. And the two angles that are created, they're going to add up to 180 degrees. So we're going to do this last quick example. Two angles are complementary. What's complementary mean? They add up to 90. So that's going to be how we set up our equation, okay? One angle measure is 36. The other angle measure is 2x plus 38. So we're going to add those two together. And we know since they're complementary, they add up to 90. All right, so we're going to solve this now. So we need to do 36 plus 38, that is 74. So we're going to subtract 74 on both sides now. We're solving for x. 2x equals 16. Divide by 2. X equals 8. All right, x equals 8. So those are all the angle pairs that we're going to talk about today. We talked about supplementary angles adding up to 180, complementary angles adding up to 90. Linear pair of angles, that's angles that create a line, they also add up to 180. And then vertical angles, angles that are across from each other when lines intersect, and those angles are congruent. So you guys have a practice that you're going to go ahead and work on. All right? If you have any questions, let me know, and have a great day.